How much you need to make on a property should be based upon how much risk you have to take. You need to think like your own bank. If it's an owner-occupied house, the interest rate's lower. Second home, slightly higher. Investment property, higher yet. A land purchase, even higher interest rate. Before we talk about calculating risk, let's calculate cash flow. The higher risk you take in buying a piece of property, the more money you should get back in cash flow. I want to give you some parameters to measure that. You're going to calculate 3 things for cash flow property. First, you have to determine the cash flow. Surprise! The cash flow is simply the monthly rent minus a vacancy rate equals your net revenue. Then you subtract your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Then you subtract a reasonable amount for maintenance, and that leaves you with the dollar amount. That dollar amount, we're going to call it $100 because it's easy math. Multiply it times 12. That's $1,200 in a year in this example. $1,200 divided by how much money did it take you to acquire this property? So if you acquired this property, down payment, closing costs and all, for $12,000, and it will give you $1,200 cash throughout the entire year, your rate of return is 10%. If you had to put more cash down, your rate of return goes down. If you put $24,000 down, your rate of return would be 5%. If you put $6,000 down, your rate of return would be 20%. That's how we calculate cash on cash return. Let's compare it against the S&P 500. Because at the end of the day, you can always put your money into an S&P 500 index fund, such as VOO. That's Vanguard's fund that mirrors the S&P 500. Now, why do I say that? Well, because the all-time lifetime return on the S&P 500 is 9% a year. Am I going to have a lot more to manage with this property than I would by just sticking my money in a fund? But in a very short-term analysis, that's what you should consider. The other calculation is assume you pay all cash. I don't care if you have all the cash or not. Calculate your cash flow for the entire year if you have no debt service. That's a cash-on-cash return if you bought the house for cash. You know how to calculate cash-on-cash returns. And how does this compare if I invested my money in an S&P 500 index? Now, I want you to calculate risk, which you can look at my next video.